That's through that program.
Yeah, we can do all that.
Can we do it now?
Uh, Not familiar with it. I didn't like structure it first.
Trying to make sure they can't see like the door. Right? Okay.
Yeah, I do have it, so I'm wondering.
You got it on there. Like, can you project that to the Bluetooth and play? Or through your speaker?
He would just need to play it from his device. Yeah.
You sound too tinny.
Okay. Because it would take how long you need to set up to connect. Well, first we have to disconnect everything from the Bluetooth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, my aunt Kathy. So good to see you.
First one.
Yeah.
Early is on time. On time.
Okay, my aunt Chester.
She from Shrine of Art, right?
Kathy?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Kathy, are you from Shrine, my aunt? Uncle my aunt M-Town Vet. And I'll give my aunt to our YouTube folks. I see a couple of you guys logging in over there too. Uncle my aunt Maakara and Wabek Kisa. Wonderful. Good. Let me see what's happening over here. Oh shoot, my mic is off. Do I, Kathy? Uncle my aunt. Uncle my aunt. You guys should be able to hear me now. Turn the mic on.
That's important.
Yeah. Do I answer? Kathy, can you hear me? Sinette B, can you hear me? Do I, Sinette? Do I, Sinette, Sai, Singletary? That's so sweet. All right, I know they can hear me on YouTube. So I just need confirmation on Facebook.
Sound that's old now, right?
Yes, they can hear us now. Yeah. You know, it's a delay, so I had to wait for the comments to come through. Yeah, to make sure y'all could hear. Okay, give thanks. Dua Netter. Dua Netter. That's awesome. Okay, good, good. Okay. So we're starting with the prayer and then the roll call. Okay, you ready? Okay. All right, we're going to begin with our communion prayer, our Sunday prayer, and then we will go into the roll call. So Amatu and Panatir. Sahuek Tuament and Panatir. Audu Auma Keti Paharu. The translation is give yourself to Netta daily, keep yourself for Netta daily, and may tomorrow be as today. We give homage to the Creator, who is like our Father and who is like our Mother, who is everything that we can perceive and everything that we cannot perceive, who is everything and yet is no thing, who comes to us in the form of the Netaru Ra, who is the light of the heavens, the light of the inner planes, as well as the light of our lives, who shines the light for us on Ma'ati, which is the path of truth, justice, righteousness, and harmonious balance, who comes to us in the form of the light of vitality, giving us the strength and the endurance to live and act upon that which we know to be true. Homage to you, the one who shines in and through us as a beacon of light for those who are blind to the facts of their place, their position, and their responsibility in the divine scheme of things. May we be Ma'akaru, true of thought, word, and deed, to our highest reality, and in our moments of crisis in the dark night of the soul when it appears that everyone and everything else has let us down. So it is, and so shall it be. Amen Ma'at. And everyone say Ma'akaru. Dua Netzer. All right, let's get the roll call started. So where is everybody logging in from? We want to say hi to everybody and see who we got in the building and see where everybody's chiming in from and make sure we all connected from our many, many places around the globe. Uncle Ma'at, Joanne.
Were you saying that? Oh, there.
Yeah. Got the comments on YouTube over here. Got the comments on Facebook over here. So we got the dual screens happening as usual. All right. So where is everybody logging in from?
Okay, Cleveland, Ohio.
Shout out to Cleveland. Shout out to Naswt Temple in Cleveland, Ohio. Shout out to Oaktown, Bay Area. We got South Jersey, Camden.
Guyana.
Shout out to let me see, who is that? Sekhmet Kamaat from Guyana. That's what's up. Connecticut is in the house. Michigan, Phoenix, Arizona, Newark, New Jersey. That's what's up. Oh wait, let me see. Okay, good. Atlanta's in the house. Columbus, Ohio, Sayreville. Shout out Anna from Brazil. Brazil, Bahia.
Okay.
Nice. Chicago, New York City on the Lower East Side. More Cleveland. Lafayette, Louisiana. Nice.
All over the place.
Yeah. Onke Ma'at, Abut Yendes. Good to see you, sis. Dua Netter. So good to see you, love.
Bed-Stuy, do or die.
Yeah. Shout out Ranu, holding it down in Bed-Stuy.
Okay,
Alabama. We got Philly in the house. What's up, Philly? New Hyde Park, South Africa. Oh, shout out Cebu Siso. I hope I said that right. Cebu Siso in South Africa.
Okay.
Dua Netter. Wow. Far-reaching connections. Dua Netter. I know. That's wonderful. That's amazing. Give thanks. All right. Well, Dua, everyone, for being with us today. Shout out to Orange, New Jersey.
Vitamin C. Orange Hill.
Citrus. Shout out to everybody. Dua for everybody being here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's communion. We've really been enjoying being in communion in this way. I know that it's something that we had to do as a response to this situation, but even in responding to the situation, it has brought a significant value in our ability to just know who's out there and connect with you guys, and to build community and reinforce community in new and unique ways, and to use technology in ways that we really just thought weren't going to be possible. When you're talking about spiritual work and spiritual community and ritual and ceremony, you know, like me personally, I always believe in the value of like being in person and being in the room. And you know, certainly, like, I would love to hug all of y'all and like touch your hands and say hi and everything like that. But despite the fact that we can't do that right now, I still love that we get to connect in some way, somehow. So I'm grateful for that, Dua Netter, and I'm grateful for you all being here. And I also want to say I'm grateful in advance for all the support that you guys have sent last week. The donations that you guys sent were incredible. I thank you guys for doing that, because as Naswt said last time, it's all about reciprocity, the energy that we are giving out to the community, and you guys feel that the work that the Temple of Anu is doing is so valuable and important that you want to support us in our effort and our mission to build, community, to build a temple, to build classes, to build things for our children, to build support structures for those who are in need. All of that are the things that your donations go to. It's just our ability to do more for the people who are seeking spiritual elevation, for the people who are seeking higher consciousness, for the people who are seeking connection, for the people who are seeking a better life for themselves and for their children and for their children's children. All of your donations help us to do that. So I thank you for your donations and for your reciprocity in advance. For those of you who might be interested in sending donations today, please do so by using Cash App, $ Temple of Anu. You can also use PayPal, templeofanu@gmail.com.
Okay. And on that, as far as the donations, once again, we thank you in advance for the donations. But it is an interesting observation from last week to this week. Like, in our whole history of doing the live streams, we never had 100 people so far. Matter of fact, we've always been under 75.
Yeah.
And last week we was like 45 or whatever. or was interested in contrast to the bigger platforms like my brother Sarnetta. He has one of the biggest platforms on YouTube, and big up to him because he's been very supportive of us over here and getting our message and our perspectives out to the greater community, because he keeps his pulse on the streets and find out what's on the streets. But he had a debate between, or he sponsored a debate between Jabari and Polite. So when I was on there, I looked at the numbers on the live stream. It said 3,100 people was on that live stream. And 3,100 people was on that live stream for approximately 3.5 to 4 hours. And I'm watching the donations, and they was giving considerable donations. Would you believe that last week we was on for 1.5 hours with only like 45 people, and we got more donations with 45 people than 3,000 on one of the greater platforms.
Yeah.
So that goes to speak to that concept. Sometimes less is more. But and like we always try to reaffirm to you all that irregardless whether you give the donation or not, we're still going to do what it is that we do.
Absolutely.
However, it still feels good to know that our work and our contribution to this dialogue that we have is highly appreciated and stuff. And it keeps us motivated also, because we're here for you and we're here with you. Where else would we be? Where else could we be? So we might as well make the most use out of it. And on that note, you want to speak about the differences between communion and the crook and the flesh?
So what we're doing today is our regularly scheduled communion, and typically speaking, we would at this point go directly into our lecture for the day. It's usually a bit less interactive than normal. It's just, an opportunity for us to share a message based on the wisdom teachings of our ancestors, and to provide guidance and inspiration that's going to empower you throughout the next couple of weeks. And as you guys know, on the in-between weeks, we've been doing the crook and the flail, which has a different structure to it. It's longer, so it's a longer format. We talk about health. We talk about things that are going on in the community, that timely issues, and talking about timely topics. And it's also more interactive. It gives us more of an opportunity to answer you guys' questions and to talk to you guys, a little bit more. And to, I know you guys, during the crook and the flail, we have you guys asking questions and putting comments and sharing articles and things like that. So we do all of that during the crook and the flail, whereas in communion, it's a little bit more of a message that's being shared from us to you. So I want to that end, encourage you guys. Next week is our next episode of the Crook and the Flail. So if you have questions or things that you would like us to discuss, please feel free to send us an email to templeofanew@gmail.com with your question, or send us a private message here on Facebook with your question, so we can incorporate it into our show next week for the Crook and the Flail. Okay, and typically we will start the Crook and the Flail at 3 p.m. So that it starts after the end of the Shrine of Ma'at's Kemetic Ascension ceremony. Okay.
Let's scroll back down. I know some people still was trying to chime in for the roll call. I think starting where you ended.
So we have Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn in the house, Mississippi, the Gulf Coast, East Orange, Irvington, and Newark, New Jersey.
Okay. All right. So you about to say something?
No, I'm just gonna adjust this mic. Okay. This camera.
So now, speaking briefly about the crook and the flail, we have the health segment. We went over things like black seed oil and what was that, moringa. And even though those are popular things, in order to deal with health, it doesn't always have to be some exotic, hard to get type of supplement. So we go over in detail what those things do for you. So I can only hope that you all are in good health. You and your family all are in good health, and you're actually able to use some of that advice to your advantage. And understand this, let's set the tone that we're not going to make our lives about fighting any virus. So those health tips and those health advice is not for the corona or the COVID. What we're doing is we're solidifying our position as cosmic citizens. We're solidifying our position as cosmic citizens. Sovereignty and freedom is our birthright. It is our earth right. It is our divine star right. So we always say the saying, we're divine beings in the flesh. we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So now the case is, if we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and I know everyone heard that before. You heard that before, but are you living the reality of it? You all right?
Yeah, keep going.
Are you living the reality of it? Can we honestly say that in this trying times of this pandemic, are we living as divine beings? Are we handling ourselves as divine beings? So when we come on this platform, when I come on this platform, I'm coming as a spiritualist, not a politician, not even a religious leader. I'm coming as a spiritualist, and our spirituality is our personal connection to the source. So I'm here to serve as a reminder to you that you are a spiritual being, and to remind you to always stay connected to your source. I know for some people that might sound spooky, but this is the channel for the spooky people, and we're comfortable in it and we embrace it. So as spiritualists, we tune into the intangible, because for us the invisible is more real than the visible. For us the invisible, the intangible precedes the tangible. So now for others out there, they say, if I can't see it, smell it, touch it, taste it, or feel it, it's not real. And that's how some people feel. For us as spiritualists, we mentally see it, taste it, touch it, feel it. And when we mentally see it, touch it, taste it, feel it, then it becomes a physical thing. So, because according to our sayings, when you focus on something exclusively, it becomes an actual physical state. So us as spiritualists, we're very much in tune with the intangible, while scientists are consumed with the tangible. For spiritualists, science is an afterthought. We don't wait for science to validate what it is that we do, because what it is that we do is very personal. True. Science tends to condemn what it is that we do and how we connect, and our verification through our own experiments and experience. They see that as anecdotal. But for us, science is an afterthought. Matter of fact, science comes into existence trying to validate spiritual things. And just because science haven't given you a scientific methodology or explanation of something does not mean it's not true. It just might mean that they haven't caught up yet. They don't have the technology to perceive other things that's more subtle and yet imperceptible. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what else to tell you if you still feel like you're chasing for resources and you feel like somehow the resources might get all used up. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you if you think money is scarce and things like that. We have to go back to remembering that the universe is mental. True. And we got to live that reality. Yes. Something came across my desk yesterday. Someone sent me something that was supposed to be about Bill Gates. I don't know if it's him because the camera angle was like from the back of the room. It dates back to 2005. And what they were discussing in that thing was something called the Fund VAC. It was a proposal to get funding for something called the Fund VAC, meaning a vaccination against fundamentalism. Remember, this is back in 2005. When was the World Trade thing?
2001.
2001. So clearly, United States were concerned about fundamentalists, but understand that word, a vaccine against fundamentalism. So I'm watching the presentation, and he has on the screen two images of a brain, and they're locating a part of the brain that's responsible for being discontent. So they're saying the root to fundamentalism is being discontent. So they want to make a vaccine to deactivate the receptor called, I think it's called a BMAT gene receptor. So if they could deactivate that gene receptor, it could lower that that feeling of discontent. So my thing is, they talk about fundamental terrorism. And we're over here in the United States. There hasn't been a war over here in a long time. So when you hear words like that, it's very convenient for us over here. What if fundamental terrorism, I need to stop saying the word, since they censored everything. Fundamental since that maybe that's just people fighting back to the best of their ability, because we don't get to witness what the United States is doing to other people in other circumstances. So when they fight back, we name it these weird names. But when they want us to be fundamental over here, they call it patriotism.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I'm listening to the lecture, and then there was a question and answer part. Because actually, a lot of the participants weren't sold. I could tell they were uncomfortable with the presentation. So they said, "How do you intend to administer this?" Then they said, "Well, you administer in the aerosol form," and that's a key word because we talk about the corona or the COVID thing, and they talk about this aerosol form of how the virus is transmuted. They're telling us about globules in the air, and when we speak or when we cough or whatever, we have almost like this imperceptible mist that stays in the air up to a half an hour. So you can't see it, so people can walk through it, and now you inhale this thing. So they're saying this is how corona is spread. So they asked him, was this the way you were going to spread it? And he said through various respiratory illnesses such as the flu and the rhinovirus. And I'm like, wow, this is 2005. They have this technology already. 2005, it's 2020 now. So he said through various respiratory, isn't this COVID thing a respiratory issue that spread through the aerosols and the globules of the air, and it's connected to the rhinovirus? For those who don't know, the rhinovirus is responsible for the common cold. But he also used the word flu also. So the point is, everyone's having this conversation about vaccination, when we're going to get these mandatory vaccinations, and nobody thought maybe this so-called new COVID is the vaccination. Remember, this FunVax was a virus that they used to create to serve as a vaccine, so they wouldn't have people willfully signing up to take the vaccine. So they created in the form of something that causes the common cold. So now here we have this thing, which has the same, pretty much same profile. So maybe we're already getting vaccinated. The problem is, the question is, we have to ask if the virus is, if that FunVax virus was meant to deactivate the BMAT receptor gene, which is responsible for quelling your feelings of discontent. Is that what's happening now? Remember, that was 2005, it's 2020. So is this a new improved version of this thing? And so how convenient would that be? So now that you're talking about a vaccination, maybe they don't need to vaccinate. Maybe that's the rumor, and we're all going to be exposed to this, which has to lend to some of our concern to, will something happen to our BMAT transmitter? Will we be more docile as the months go on? So maybe they will come up with another vaccination that is to do something else. And since that BMAT could be deactivated, maybe we will be lining up because we've now been vaccinated, and that urge to fight back has been disabled. And that's something we need to concern ourselves about. So what's the difference between religious fundamentalism and spiritual fundamentalism? Because they wanted to give them this virus in the form of a cold because they know those people will fight back. So now we're experiencing a similar version of that now. They took away the religious right not to get vaccinated, right? So they're slowly taking our rights away. So now we are in this position where now we, just like the so-called religious fundamentalists, just like how certain people are like vegan fundamentalists, some people won't even eat from pots that had meat in it. That's like a form of fundamentalism. So this new situation that we're under is putting us in a position now that we have to renegotiate what we live for, what we fight for, what we're willing to die for, and what we're willing to kill for. So it's almost like it's a sparring match between so-called powers to be and what we actually stand for. And maybe this thing is to dumb us down, so we just start getting more and more quiet. So I know certain people is like, okay, that's that conspiracy theory. So let's deal with it. Let's deal with the contrast between conspiracies and conspiracy theories. So let's deal with the word conspiracy. Conspiracy comes from the word conspiracy. Con means to congregate, and connect, it means to gather. And spiracy means to breathe. So conspiracy is to breathe together. So we're not talking about meditation. We're not talking about yoga. So they're talking about like whispering. So groups of people whispering, and other groups of people not privy to this conversation that people are whispering about. So there's always been conspiracy since the beginning of time. So now when the Arabs conspired amongst themselves to commit us to slavery. They wasn't making us privy to conversation in North Africa and West Africa. So that serves as a conspiracy. So when the whites or when the Arabs conspired with the Portuguese to take over the slave trade, they didn't have us privy to that conversation. So that's a conspiracy. So when the Portuguese conspired with the other Europeans about enslaving us, once again, we wasn't privy to that conversation. So that's a conspiracy. So conspiracies are real. Conspiracy theories is when it gets questionable. So the theory pretty much is a educated guess through observation. It's an assumption. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. So theories are dealing with trying to create or develop a narrative about the trajectory of a conspiracy. For instance, some people say slavery was all about our melanin. They need our melanin. Well, slavery's so to keep black people held down, and that's just not true. It's an assumption based off of which you have observed. So yes, we were slaves, and yes, melanated people were slaves, but it doesn't mean that we were all, they're just trying to keep all black folks slaves, because this new pandemic is affecting everybody. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, melanated, non-melanated. What it is a broadening of the gap between upper class and lower class. They just took away the whole middle class, and that's affecting everybody, white, on the whole spectrum and stuff like that. So in my opinion, 3 out of every 4 conspiracy theories are false, or they just don't play out. So now we're experiencing this so-called pandemic, and people have been talking this conspiracy about vaccination since 2005 or even before. So many of the so-called conspiracy theorists are happy, they celebrating. See, I told you I was right, such and such. And I'm just like, fool, you was wrong 9 out of the 10 times. So you don't get to celebrate this one time you might be on to something. 9 of those other times it was wrong or didn't play out, and nobody checked you on that. In certain traditions, in the Bible tradition, that would be considered a false prophet, and you would get stoned to death in certain cultures for most of your prophecies and predictions not coming true. So that's why conspiracy theorists are under the gun and they get ridiculed. But the problem is with the conspiracy theories is people say it inspires fear, and it's stressful. So why is it stressful and why is it causing fear? We have to check ourselves. See, I'm a martial artist. I tend not to fear anything. Somebody be like, don't go over there. I'll be like, where? Over here? So sometimes we be obstinate in our self-confidence because we're principled people. And we like to pride ourselves in being prepared for whatever. So the fear comes from not the conspiracy so-called theory. The fear comes from the lack of confidence in your principle. So what happens is when you're not confident in your principle, and remember, we're supposed to be spiritualists, so we're supposed to stay in touch and in tune with the source, our primary source, which is the sun, and our primary resources, which are the Neteru and the ancestors. So we're supposed to have an unquestionable connection to those things, and those things are supposed to be constantly verifying those connections and those attunements every day in our lives. So there should be no such thing as a spiritual person who lacks confidence. There should be no such thing as a spiritual person who's scared. Matter of fact, you could be scared, but there's certain things you got to work through your fear and do it anyway. Yep. And those things you learn through martial arts and things like that. So the people that are fearful, that can't even tend to listen to things like that, we have to ask ourselves, they have to ask themselves. Remember, I'm not judging anyone. These are questions that we all have to ask ourselves. True. So you be like, so what happens? The fear comes from people are not satisfied with where they are presently in life. They be like, damn, I ain't made nothing of myself the way I thought I would at this point in my life. I ain't got the money I was supposed to have. I don't have the power I thought I was supposed to have. So I don't have the influence. So in result, you feel impotent. And that impotence leads to the feeling of fear. Yeah. And as far as the conspiracy theories, so there's nothing inherently wrong with conspiracy theories. The problem is unintentionally, those people that push those theories, unintentionally, they project the opposition to be the victors. Yeah. And so you know, they be like, well, you heard they're gonna have us enslaved, like, they're gonna have us in chains next week. You heard they're gonna force us. You be like, damn. So it's just like so the scenario that's being pushed to us is we're not gonna win, or the opposition is gonna have more power, and we always just gonna be left surviving their plan. So the conspiracy theories weren't meant to make you scared or fearful. The conspiracy theories were meant to make you more creative on how you're navigating your life and your existence. So why do we always leave it for the opposition to have a plan? Why still 400 years later we still don't have a plan? If not as a people amongst us in our own circles, in our own community. So that's what it should inspire. It should inspire fear. It should inspire create new levels of creativity. As I said, as a martial artist, we don't train just for our attack to come forward. We train for it to come from the rear. We train for it to come from the sides, from below, from above. So we never say, I'm not concerned with nobody coming from behind or back. If they were a real man or if they were a real person, they would meet me face to face. That's stupid. So we train for everything. So no matter what way it comes, we can respond in peace and total confidence because we're trained and we're principled people. So that's how we're supposed to respond to conspiracy theories. You'd be like, yeah, I heard something like that, but I'm not going to stress about it. So if this virus is man-made or coming from the lab, you'd be like, okay, what am I going to do about my health? What can I do about my immunity? If it's about money, you'd be like, okay. If it's messing with the economics, you'd be like, okay, how can I be better about my money? What are other ways I can make my money? What are other ways we could pool our resources and help each other with the money? What if it turns physical? Do you got a gun? Do you got a knife? Can you protect yourself? Can you protect your family? You know, so you have to be prepared for any way that it comes. That's the most responsible thing to do. That is the most mature way to handle it as a spiritualist, because remember, there ain't no spooky forces going to come from outside and save you. Spirit works in and through you. Remember, God exists within you as you, so spirit works through you. So you have to be physically capable of handling that force when it comes through. And your blessings are going to come through your brothers and your sisters. It's not going to come from any spook force. The spook force is going to come through somebody to inspire people to look out for you, inspire you to look out for other people. So we always have to keep our hearts open and our minds at peace. So now I see people not wanting to lend any credence to some of the so-called spiritual conspiracy theories. So instead of saying, yeah, you were right about that, they'll be like, well, what are we going to do? What's the solution? And so they try to put that on people like that's really a responsibility for spirituality or for politicians. There's no one thing that we could do as people that's going to fix this problem. This problem was systemic. So the whole system was rotten, so it needs to be a reboot. So it's no one thing that we could do. It's no two things that we could do. Us as spiritualists, we have to get in tune with the original system. So we got to get back in tune with the sun. We got to get back in tune with the earth. Now we have time to do it, right? Before they kept us distracted. So get back in tune with the sun. Get back in tune with the earth. Drink some water. People just like, what's that got to, my thing is like, I cannot worry about the masses of our people. We're talking to our A-alites and B-alites right now. So we're spiritualists talking. This is our approach to it. Get that sun, get that air, get that water. Why is that significant? That's significant because when you get that air, and when you get that water, when you get that sunshine, when you start breathing better, you're going to start feeling better. You start feeling better, and you're going to start thinking better. You start thinking better, and you're going to start making better decisions. Start making better decisions, you'll be in better positions. You saw that progression? So that's called the holistic system.
Yes.
So now we're trying to recover from another type of system where they gave us bad information, bad education, having us feeling bad about ourselves. Since we felt bad about ourselves, we started thinking bad, making bad decisions, and bad decisions put us in this compromised position. Mm-hmm. That's called totalitarian. That's the totalitarian system. We're supposed to get in tune with the holistic system. They got us under a totalitarian system. So how does it all come together? So is it like, how does this breathing, meditating, and being at peace, what's that going to do with the powers that be? How is that going to stop things? Those are the questions people are asking. And based off of how you respond, they're gonna call you pseudo or whatever. So remember, we're spiritualists. We're in tune with the intangible. The intangible to us is just as real or more real than the tangible.
Yes.
So as spiritualists, this is how it works. Remember, this is a war going on. So it's both sides are co-creators of this reality. Why do you keep forfeiting your power to the other side, giving them the power to determine what the reality is going to be?
Right.
So this is how it works out, and this is always how it's all worked out. And this is why a lot of the so-called conspiracy theories didn't play out the way they were predicted to play out. This is partially why. So if they're co-creators of the reality on their side, and you're co-creators of reality on this side, remember, they always have a plan. You don't have a plan. A lot of times, our plan is just to resist their plan. And that becomes the reality that gets created. So they have a plan. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Right. We all got plans to be millionaires and stuff. Are we millionaires yet? No. Sometimes you fail. So they have a plan, but it doesn't mean they're always going to be successful. Right. To borrow something from the Muslim, they said, you have a plan and Allah has a plan, and Allah is the best of planners. That's very spiritual in the sense. So yeah, they can have a plan, but our plan is to be in tune with the very forces of nature that govern this existence. So if we're in tune with that, it don't matter what their plan is. We don't have to fight them. They could be against us, but we don't have to be against anything because we're in tune with the very essence of. Am I too spooky?
Not at all. Very spooky enough.
So what happens is, we plan to resist whatever their plan is. So that's why at the end you heard a lot of things, but it don't always play out the way you heard it was going to be able to play out. And so we don't ever really be oppressed like we heard what they was trying to oppress us. So that side is not totally happy with what's going down there. Even though it's not as bad as we thought it was going to be, we ain't happy either. So it's just a time to readjust, like, okay, what is our plan?
Yes.
So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to have some real talk and stuff. Outside of the history, outside of the science, what is the real talk? Who are we? What are we about? It goes back down to what it is that we believe. So I just wanted to use that as an opener to what we're supposed to be discussing, which was Session Sue's question from last week, which was, how does, what was the question?
It was about, he was asking about the interconnection between ritual and how it supports and feeds our health, the health benefits of ritual and spirituality.
Okay. Let's see what they saying first.
So Willie asked the question. He said he bought the Book of the Dead and the Black Bible of Science. What do we think of that book? And I did see the Session Sue and Amakeda let him know that the proper name for the Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, in Rani Kemet is the Reyunu Pert Heru Gur, or the chapters of coming forth by day from night, also known as the chapters of enlightenment, or the Book of Enlightenment, or the Book of coming forth by day from night. So do you want to speak on it more than that, or just to say, I never heard of the Black Bible of Science.
I never heard
of okay, I never heard of that, so I can't speak to that. As far as the Pertem Heru is concerned, I don't encourage that book for beginners, to be honest with you. That's a book for people who are well studied and well read in the tradition. It's a book of rituals. It's a book without the right context. You could read it a dozen times, it won't make sense to you. So it's funerary rites. It's funerary rites. It's rituals, and so I wouldn't say it's not a good book to have in your arsenal or to have on your bookshelf. It's just not the best starting book. It's just not. It's not. It'll make sense later. It'll make sense later. It won't make sense right away, to be honest with you. So we've been working on a book list. That we like an infographic that we can release that will have a list of books, particularly for beginners and those who are like in the middle of their studies in the Kemetic tradition, like to help provide like a foundation of texts, and that's gonna be forthcoming. So I would just say keep an eye out for that. And then Majudi just asked, when you say Naswt, when you say we don't have to fight them, can you elaborate on that? Yeah, I mean, I think what Naswt was saying was that, like, we are directing too much energy towards them instead of directing energy into what our actual goals are. Like, what is it that we actually want? Do we want to create a life where we are constantly fighting them, or do we want to create a life of success and abundance and prosperity? A few weeks ago, Naswt said, where the mind goes, energy flows.
Yeah.
Right. So if we keep putting in our minds that that our lives have to be about fighting the enemy, like, then we always going to be fighting the enemy. That's going to be our whole life. So then when we look around our lives and we say, like, man, I don't have the career I want, I don't have the family I want, I don't have the money I want, I don't have the house that I want, I don't have the car that I want. Like, well, you put all your energy into your enemy. You put all of your energy into your enemy's plans. You put all of your energy into your enemy's intentions. You put all of your energy into your enemy's thoughts. All of your thoughts, emotions, etc. So ultimately what we're saying is that, like, we really, not to say we shouldn't be cognizant of our enemy, but just to say that where mind goes, energy flows. Our energy should not be entirely swept up and caught up in other people's stuff, because if our energy is completely tied up in that, then our energy is not being directed into our own spiritual fulfillment, our own spiritual attainment, our own the purpose, the realization of our own purpose, the realization of our own excellence. We can't become who we're meant to become divinely if we're spending 70% of our energy over there. That's 70% of our energy that's wasted. So I would just say, what Judy's saying, is it possible to do both, build your foundation and defend it too? Absolutely. I would just say we just need to be mindful about how we spend our energy. So it's about, again, being 20% cognizant of what's going on with your energy or with your enemy, being aware of what your enemy is planning, being aware of it, but you still need to put the majority and the bulk of your energy behind your own intentions and securing your own foundation and securing and making sure that you're empowering your own reality.
Yeah. Too.
Yeah. So Willie said the book is called The Black Bible of Science Compilation by Dr. Osei Kufuor. We'd have to look it up and get back to you, Willie, because I've never heard of that book. Yeah.
Mars had a good point. More proactive, less reactive.
Yeah. That's important for all of us to be. Like, in the temple we usually say, like, be responsive, not reactive. Like, so responding is saying that you are that you have menab, that you have presence of mind, that you're operating from a place of consciousness, that you're operating from a place of purpose and intention. Reaction is just like somebody set you off. Something happened and you have to respond to it or react to it. You have to jump because they say jump. And we just don't want to be in a position where we're constantly jumping when our enemies say jump. Like, we need to be like, that's not smart for me to jump at, because if I jump in this moment, I'm going to jump right into your trap. So how do we be smart? How do we be thoughtful? How do we have foresight? How do we have insight? How do we choose how to direct our energy, right? Let me see. Can we post the list on the website? Absolutely. When the list is ready, we'll post it on our website, on our Facebook page, etc. Curti said, I will admit that I have been a little afraid lately, so I appreciate this conversation on fear. I think it's honest to acknowledge that people have been afraid. Like, it's honest, it's true, it's real. Like, some of us have been. I don't think that it's productive for us to say we haven't been when we have. I think we have to acknowledge and be honest about where we really are. Mm-hmm. The difference is that, like, are you afraid and therefore your decisions are coming from a place of fear, or are you afraid but you're still choosing to act with conscious intention and divine purpose, and just acknowledging that the fear exists as an emotion that you have to process. Because, like I said, I go out to the store, I come home, I've picked up on other people's emotions, and so I could feel in my own self that I'm afraid, or that I have a level of intensity or tightness that I didn't have when I left the house, because I'm picking up on the fear that's in the atmosphere. It's just in the atmosphere. So how do we deal with that? Like, are we dealing with that by succumbing to it? Are we just letting it guide our reality? Or are we just acknowledging that it's there so that we can continue to build our reality from our place of purpose and divine intelligence?
Just contemplate my metaphor about martial arts. As spiritualists, we're spiritual martial artists. We've been trained, we have the tools, so you're supposed to operate and navigate the world with total confidence of your tools. So whatever comes up, you should understand that I'm able to deal with it. And in reality, you might lose. You could possibly lose, but that got nothing to do with whether you're qualified to handle it or not. And that's the warrior mentality. That's why it said the energy over this year, or one of the energies over this year, is Kheper.
Yeah.
So you're about to find out what you're actually made out of.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's time to get out of your head and into your life. This is a wonderful opportunity. And yes, it's scary, but as spiritual people, we're supposed to breathe through the fear.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I guess I'll get into, what was it, the health benefits?
Of ritual, like the connection between ritual and your health.
Okay, so the connection between ritual and the health in our tradition. So I would say the top is Tepra in Tepre. Tepra or Tepre is the word for oracle in African tradition. In the Afro-Kemetic tradition, it's called what's it called? It's called Ifa.
I think it's Ifa and
Ifa. Amongst the Yoruba, it's called Ifa, the Ifa divination. And for us, it's Tepra. Tepra. Tep is I would say, the ancestor or the cognate of the word top. It means authority, and Re or Ra comes from the word mouth. We say the top authority is Ra, the authoritative utterance from the mouth of Ra, which is the divinity. And Tepred is Tep and Red, the images of a head, and then there's two legs. So with the order, the charge that comes from the head, the legs are meant to follow.
Yep.
So now divination. So this is what, this is also another answer to what Majudi was saying, like, how do you fight back? So divination gives you a glimpse at what could be and what will be. So when you get a divination reading, you're finding out what could be based off of your level of consciousness at the time. Like, this is what's going to happen based off of how you're thinking and how you're acting and how you're conducting yourself at this time. So now understand that, like, just by you knowing that, it automatically changes it. Because it can say, yes, you're going to be successful. So people start falling back because they get comfortable. I'm doing the right thing. I'm going to be successful. So now that you know that you're going to be successful, you might not go as hard as you would when you were insecure about whether you was going to definitely succeed or not. Right. So now just knowing that answer changes everything. So it shows you what could be and what will be. So now that you know that, you can make some changes. You could get even more organized. You could go even harder. And for instance, what if someone said you're gonna die next week, and you'd be like, damn. And you do an evaluation of your life, you'd be like, I guess I need to stop getting high. I need to stop drinking or whatever, because it could say you're gonna die by a car accident. You'd be like, okay, so you start checking yourself. Now that you know that, you start making some changes, because that doesn't have to go down. You have to make some fundamental changes about yourself. Right. So when we do readings, divination readings about ourselves, our circumstances, or the state of the world, we have a heads up based off of where we are at the moment into what's going to happen, and we can have our say so, because we are co-creators in this whole thing. Right. Where we're not slaves, we're not just servants, we're co-creators. And remember, through the principle of Kemmunion, vitalism, the creator works in us and through us. So divination was meant to give you peace of mind.
Yes.
So if you know you're going to be all right, you're supposed to relax. It doesn't matter what's going on in front of you now. You be like, the deity said, I'm going to be good. So yes. I'm going to be good. It's supposed you did the reading several weeks ago, and it said this thing is going to come to pass or go towards a new normal by June. And here we are, as of last week, they're talking about slowly reopening the country. But she already did that reading, so we were just relaxing into the reality of what it is and stuff. That's why Hemet is like, we still doing a retreat. So the world will give up, society will give up before we'll give up.
Yeah.
We're going with, like we said, we go with God. we go with the force. The force is telling us we good, then we're good. So that's peace of mind. Peace of mind could be said to support your mental health. So divination could be said to be a support of your mental health, or contributes to your mental health. The second part of how divination supports, or the ritual of divination supports your health, is through psychology. I like to say religion and spirituality is the new psychology. So if you replace the word religion with psychology, it'll make total sense. So psychology is the study of the psyche. Psyche is a Greek word, it means soul. So study of the soul. So essentially it's the study of cause and effect. Remember, that goes back to the Kemetic principles of the Kabbalion, cause and effect. Psychology is the study of causes and effect, the in detail study of causes and effect. I heard it's about what you've done and what's been done to you, and trying to understand those things. And we see that in the negative thing when something happens where the prey becomes a predator based off of what they've been exposed to, based off of what's happened to a person. They can actually become the predator, just like how they were victimized. So in our tradition, the deities, the Neteru, represent faculties that's in your psyche. So deities are governing principles of and in your psyche. So divination reveals who and what are the governing principles of a situation, and then reminds you of your free will to let things be, or to renegotiate your reality.
Yes.
I'm going to repeat that. Divination reveals who and what are the governing principles of a situation. For instance, we did the reading of the year, and it said one of the governing principles in our psyche is going to be Heru. So I mean, we have to stand up. We have to marshal our forces, because we're going to have to fight, whether physically, ethically, morally, figuratively. Because remember, so Heru had to get in that work with Satesh. And he didn't necessarily beat Satesh either. And when you listen to the story, it's a stalemate. Because when he was about to end Satesh or set interfere, because there needs to be a balance. And that was that vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So there's a difference between justice and vengeance. Justice is a divine principle of balance in the universe. Vengeance is personal.
Yeah.
Vengeance like F that. You know, like you're looking for some type of emotional gratification, and that's when it gets tainted, and that's when it backfires on you, and then you're gonna have to experience the energy that you put out. Yeah. Because if everyone's an expression of divine force and divine being, what I do to someone else, I'm actually doing to myself.
Yeah.
So we have to always mind our mind. That goes back to that mind and the mind. So where was I? Also, divination reveals who and what you are, what governing principles of a situation, and reminds you that you have the free will to let things be and to renegotiate your reality. So it'd be like, based off of what's going on in your life, this is what's happening. You're going to be good or you're not going to be good. You'd be like, I don't want to not be good. So what do I have to do to be good? So they'd be like, these are the forces, or these are the energies that you have to work with. So now with a system like that in your spirituality, how could you lose?
Right.
So now when we have to ask ourselves again, why aren't we winning? So if you're not winning, it's because you've probably been obstinate to the advice. You asked the universe gave you an answer. A lot of times you don't like the answer you receive, and you start remixing what deity told you. And that's half the problem right there. Yeah. We try to remix what deity told us because it's not emotionally gratifying.
Or we go ask somebody else. We decide we don't like that reading. We go get another reading until we get the answer we want. Mm-hmm. We try to bribe the Neteru. Ain't good. Sorry, go ahead.
And I find that most readings still confirm one another. There's certain readers are just better at expounding on the interpretation than others. So when people do that and they come back to me and say they got another reading, I just see it as a different angle of what I told them already. So what is it, when the student is ready to master, will appears, but when the student is ready to be fooled, the charlatan will appear too. So you can eventually find somebody that's going to tell you what it is that you're looking to learn and stuff. So understand this: the truth is often uncomfortable. Growth is often uncomfortable. So if you're saying you're a real truth seeker, then a significant portion in your life is going to be uncomfortable. Ease ease, that word ease kind of puts you to sleep. It dumbs you down. Remember, we come from the martial arts background, so everything was about a challenge and pushing through to the next level, and we became better men from the hard push-ups, the sit-ups, and the fighting or whatever. And yes, there was some pain, but I'm glad I did it, and I wouldn't, if I could do it all over again, I would not have that as part of the thing. So as spiritualists, you need to embrace adversity. That adversity is what you need to activate your Heru. So we shouldn't be running from the challenge. We shouldn't be scared of anything. We got to embrace it. Be like, okay, it's here. Karmically, I'm here at this time, at this place. I'm not supposed to be running. I wasn't put on this planet to run or exile out the country. Like, no, I'm put here to figure it out. So are you open to figuring it out? Divination helps you figure it out. So now, divination, knowing that to some degree you can influence and control your reality, should bring you some measure of peace of mind. That makes sense?
Too.
I'm looking to the side over here. The Kheper is over here, so we live.
Shout out to the Kheper.
So number 2, ritual. Kesu is ritual and ceremony. Ceremony is the medium of the individual meeting and merging with the archetype. So remember, through divination, you find out what deities are governing the situation. So now after that, you need Kesu.
Right.
You need ceremony. You need ritual to now merge and identify and merge with that divine archetype through symbolic reenactments of portions of the mythos. So we talk about Heru. So we need to wear the colors of Heru. We need to dance a dance that tells the story of Heru. We need to have the altar to Heru. So now we're talking about the connection between aesthetics and kinetics. Kinetics is the movement of energy, and aesthetics is an environment. So ceremony helps you set up the environment to actually move, manipulate, adjust, embody energy. So ritual is a form of psychic unburdening, and just like disease is a form of how you psychically unburden yourself to get to your next level. So disease is not even bad. It's just, remember, it just means the energies in your body are not flowing at ease. So it makes you have to go in and figure out what's going on with my body. Why ain't my liver doing what it's supposed to do? So now here's where the spookism comes in. So now in our tradition of spirituality, we have spiritual correspondences to the organs. So it means something when your liver is not functioning. It means something when your pancreas is not functioning. So in the medical profession, they call it diabetes, but diabetes means something different to a spiritualist. We understand that we can have some impact upon the pancreas and the liver and things like that. So sometimes when you get sick, it's a biofeedback from the universe that you need to get right, because clearly you're not listening to what the spirit was telling you inside. So it's going to need physical, it's going to come to you in the form of other people like doctors, like, Negro, you got diabetes. You got to eat right. So what does diabetes make you eat right? You're like, damn, I got to lay off the sugar. Damn, I got to eat more vegetables. You should have been on it like that in the first place.
Right.
So disease is not even a bad thing. It's how you psychically unburden yourself. So the quicker you're able to unburden yourself, the quicker you could be on your path to health. So take that thing in mind with COVID-19. So COVID, this thing's supposed to affect the lungs. The lungs are supposed to associate with grief. So grief is the failure to accept what's happened already. So you'd be like, okay, is it really this virus, or was I vulnerable to this experience in the first place? What am I grieving? Am I grieving at not living up to what I said I was going to do? Mm-hmm. Am I grieving by not living up to being who I said I was going to be? Mm-hmm. So these things make you susceptible to these other things. Mm-hmm. And by holding all that in, by not being true to self, you suffocate your spirit. When you suffocate your spirit, you activate viruses in your body. That sounds crazy, right? So the lack of oxygen in your body causes certain viral strains in your body to replicate, because you have more virus in your body at any given time than you have bacteria. Bacteria and virus make up a big portion of who you are. So when you repress spirit, therefore you're repressing breath. Spirit means to breathe. So you repress breathing, you repress your spirit, you're going to activate some stuff. So now, is COVID really coming from the outside, or was it already there and you done made yourself susceptible because you weren't in ma'at, you weren't living in truth? Mm-hmm. I'm preaching now.
Yeah, you kind of are.
I need to fall back now.
Get the fan.
So when the ritual, when done correctly, it contributes to a healthy and peaceful state of mind. Certain rituals are high rituals and certain rituals are low rituals. Certain rituals are low vibrational rituals. So even though you participate in it, like so-called certain levels of sorcery that cause other people's harm, eventually it's going to come back to hurt you, because everyone is a manifestation of the divine force. So when it's done correctly, it contributes to a healthy state of mind and a peaceful state of mind. Now we have Mawu. Mawu is meditation. We spoke about meditation last week. Meditation is listening. We talk about a dialogue with the universe. Prayer is talking to divine force and your ancestors. Meditation, Mawu, is listening. So we're authentic people. If we're Ma'atic people, how it look like if I'm talking Kheper and I'm just talking to him. So now I'm not talking to him or with him. I'm talking at him, and I won't let him ever say anything. I won't ever let him respond back. So that will be an imbalance. So meditation is the art of listening. Yes. On its fundamental level. So meditation is to help with the healthy download or upload of the divinity or ancestor within your psyche. Is the preparation for a healthy download or upload of the divinity, the divine force, whether it's Hiru or Offset, whether it's Sekhmet, or your ancestors into your psyche. So meditation helps you prepare for that. Or it's necessary if you want to do that in a helpful manner. Now we have the hour marker. I should end it, this way. Now we have, what you got to say?
Nope. Go ahead.
We have Pekretu. Pekretu is remedies or medicinal. So that is the Kemetic version of pharmacopoeia. Remember, we talk about pharmacy means magical weeds or esoteric weeds. So in our tradition, we would use the word Pekretu. It means remedies or things. So we're talking about the plants. We're talking about the consciousness of plants. Plants are also connected to the mineral kingdom. Mm-hmm. You have the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, human kingdom, and maybe there's even a humanimal. Since we talk about this higher self or lower self, so you got human beings walking around acting no different than animals.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I need to take that back. A bull is always a bull.
Right.
A deer is always a deer. Right. So what does it mean when we say we're actually dishonoring animals? Because a bull is never betraying its nature.
Never.
We're the only ones that betray our nature, always trying to be something that we're not. So it's actually a misnomer to say animal nature in that sense. Matter of fact, animal nature would really mean that you're true to who you really are. Mm-hmm. Animal comes from the word animal. Another word means to move. It's another word for spirit. Animal. El comes from another word. Latin is El. El means God, divine spirit. So now that gets into shamanic ideas, but we talk about the animal spirit. In our tradition, we have deities that govern our heads. Right. In the Kemetic tradition, all the deities have animal heads. Anyway, it's a sidebar. So plant consciousness. So the plants are consciousness, or the plants have consciousness. The plants are part of the mineral kingdom, or is connected to the mineral kingdom. We get the minerals in our body not through just eating rocks and stuff. The plants digest that stuff, so we get what you call plant-derived minerals. Minerals are microcrystals. Crystals emit as well as transmit light. So plants are a conduit of information, consciousness, light. We're getting deeper with that. So plants are consciousness. Plants are governed by heavenly or planetary forces. Mm-hmm. Remedies are made taking that thing into consideration. So we talked about the difference between the spiritualist, the shaman, and the pharmacist. Remember, pharmacy means magical weeds or magical plants. So remember I said science is based off of trying to figure out whether spiritual principles were true. So they found out some things. So the pharmacist is dealing with the plants, but the spiritualist is dealing with the plants also. But the difference between the spiritualist and the pharmacist is the approach to nature. So the pharmacist is like, I'm getting the plants, while the spiritualist is there doing prayers and they're communicating, they're asking permission of the plant.
Right.
I think I spoke last week. If you don't pray and you don't get permission of the plant withdraws its life force, its vital principles to the root. So here you are trying to get the stem and the leaves, and there's nothing in it, and you putting it in your
And it's not potent.
yeah, and it's not potent the way it could be or what it once was, because the good part you done thrown out because you're not even trying to get the root. You're messing with the petals and things like that. So the spiritualists, they speak to the plant. Then it's about the cycles. What cycle? So you got the waxing cycle, you got the high cycle, and you got the waning cycle. Are you picking it in a proper cycle where the vitality is at its highest? Or are you now, I don't know, you have wild crafting, and then there's, what do they call it? Because they have plants on plantations now.
Like cultivating.
Yeah, cultivating. So wild crafting is always the best. But since we become an industrial society, they're cultivating. So like they got
farm raised fish.
Farm raised fish. So they got the plants lined up. So now they're not necessarily following the cycles of when the plants are the most vital. We have to keep up with industry. So some of it is immature. Some of they're pulling it too prematurely. Yeah. So therefore, that's why a lot of the herbs are not doing what it's supposed to do, because there's industry now. And it's not just us out in nature and say, oh, this is a nice flower. Thank you, flower. I'm going to use you for such and such. Now it's just like, yo, get all those acres of the petals over there, and we're going to put it in this formula. Then you got to understand planetary influence. What is the spirit of this plant? What's the governing spirit of the plant? And then you have Hekau, remains the intelligent application of your words of power, your spiritual authority to use this plant for intelligent application, not just for the health of the body, the health of your body, your meridians, your mind, your spirit. Yeah. So it's a whole different approach that's going to give you different results. So that's the difference between wildcrafting and planting your own and buying something from the herb store. That's why we got to pray over our food, because the frequency has been compromised, and we got to bring it back up to speed. So that's why I have tuning forks and stuff. Like I'm bringing tuning forks over my water. I'm praying and talking to my water over my food. You got to bring the frequency up. You got to activate the crystals in it. Remember, crystals transmit and receive energy. So you got to wake that thing up. So certain plants like sunflower and sunflower seeds. So those correspond with who we call Aten Ra, the sun. So those things used in ritual for rejuvenation or regeneration or rejuvenation of your essence. Then you have something like peppermint. Peppermint is sacred to Het Haru, or they say Venus. So peppermint lifts the spirits. Because peppermint increases oxygenation in your cells and your blood, is said to be a sexual arousal. So not only does it lift the spirits, it lifts the sexual, lifts the libido. If you take some dry peppermint things and burn them in the house, it has a healing effect as well as lifts the spirits or disperses negative energy.
Correct.
So that's a whole course of action in itself. Let's move on. So I'm going to close it by saying how spirituality improves our health. You need to understand these last 4 things, and then we're done. We need to understand emotional discipline, mental discipline, physical discipline, and nutritional discipline. So go to the top, emotional discipline. I'll give you a quote. Emotions make good servants, but
poor
masters. Emotions is energy and motion. What it said, he or she who is self-mastered, the harsh are kinder to them than their own mothers. He or she who is self-mastered masters others. Mental discipline goes back to what the mind exclusively focuses on becomes an actual physical state. Remember, as spiritualists, the intangible is more real to us than the tangible. When we make the intangible real, it becomes tangible. Physical discipline. What are we talking about? Physical discipline. What does that mean to you?
I guess the fortitude to push through your
You said
limitation.
the fortitude to push through. What does physical discipline mean to you?
Control of action, control of thought, control of action, steadfastness of purpose, which are the first 3 of the 10 virtues. But why I say that is because physical discipline, meaning that you have the discipline to know how to move, how to sit, how to breathe, when to move, things like that, like yoga.
There you go.
Yeah. Sorry, I was using all the words. I should have just said yoga. I was using all the words.
Most people think like physicality, like exercise,
Yeah.
but not just any exercise. We're talking about mind-body exercise such as yoga and things like qigong and stuff, because people be trying to separate the body from the mind. And the body is a manifestation of the mind. So we should be indulging in exercise that reinforces that connection. The body is the vehicle for the vital force, the moyo, to work through. So you gotta step up the physical body in order for it to be able to, I guess, for
channel the high amounts of energy. Like if you're gonna channel high amounts of energy, your body has to be prepared for that. So that's where the control of action and the yoga disciplines, etc., comes into place.
They had this new thing that's big about the DMT, dimethyltryptamine. I think dimethyltryptamine. They call it the spirit molecule. It's supposed to be generated in the pineal gland. You find it in the herbs, the plants called ayahuasca, LSD, and things like that. It's supposed to help you go to other dimensions, see other beings, get messages, and come back. So now you got this new movement. Everybody's trying to do ayahuasca and all these things because their lives are so mediocre. They don't go in depth enough in their spirituality that now they're forced to go outside of themselves to get answers that's already there. So DMT is in those plants, but we find out that DMT is actually in the blood. They have traces of it in the blood. It's in the cerebral spinal fluid. It's in the lungs, and it's in certain areas of the brain. So now, what am I talking about? So we're talking about the mind-body connection, talking about qigong and yoga, things that manipulate the breath. So doesn't yoga always have you turning, twisting, breathing, holding breath and stuff? So we have DMT in the cerebral spinal fluid. Then yoga is having you do these inverted postures where you're sending oxygen and blood to the brain, but DMT is in the blood. So now, through these metaphysical practices, you're able to activate the minute levels of DMT in your blood, your lungs, remember, through the breathing, expanding of the lungs, and all these manipulations of breaths and all these counts. So if you're really into yoga, we're not talking about the surface yoga you do at the gym, we're talking about real yoga. And they're telling you about breaths and how to count your breaths and stuff. Now you could stimulate yourself into certain levels of that thing that the LSD and the ayahuasca gets you to, because that certain cultures do that, and I'm not down in that. I just haven't found any evidence of that in Kemetic culture. So certain cultures do that, and that's how they do it. But yet in other cultures, they do it through yoga and things like qigong yoga, and you just go deeper and deeper into that practice, and you meet those same deities and have those same experiences that the plants consciousness could get and stuff. So in the African tradition, we African as well as the Sufi tradition, we get there through hours and hours of hesing and dancing and stuff. You work yourself into what they call the frenzy, the Christians call the Holy Ghost, and you come back with messages, the same type of thing that they use through those administered drugs and stuff like that. But we got to be careful because our melanin tends to bind to chemicals, so we're the most likely to get addicted to drugs, alcohol, and things like that. So we always have to be careful with the administering of substances like the mind-altering substances and stuff, because we're people that we're hurting and we're in pain. So anything that brings us pleasure, we tend to go extra hard into. So by going extra hard in and now having a proclivity towards addiction, we have to be more mindful. That goes back to the mental discipline part.
Yes.
And lastly, we have nutritional discipline. There's that saying, I don't know if it comes from the Bible or from the Greeks or whatever, but it's appropriate. Let thy food be the medicine, and thy medicine be thy food. So nutritional discipline for us is always going to come down to, with armor cow like this, you got to clean. 3 things: clean, rebuild, and then maintain. That is the foundation of health. Cleanse, rebuild, maintain. So what I'm noticing in our society is people be trying to skip level. And in skipping those levels, or emphasizing one level over the next level, in doing that, it creates imbalance. Remember, we're supposed to be Ankh in Ma'at, living in not just truth, but living in balance. So people they picked certain diets that was necessary for them at their phase to overcome a certain condition, and they start pushing that as a whole movement, and like everybody needs to just do fruits, everybody needs to just do vegetables, when that might be appropriate for a phase.
Right.
Because remember, I think there's eat right for your blood type. So what is your real ancestors? Your ancestors in your blood might require something different from my ancestors in my blood. So I think named Brother Enki has a book called Eat Right for Your Haplotype. So not just your blood type, but your haplotype, meaning go back to get your DNA ancestry done, find out who the different streams of bloodline that's working through you. So everyone has slightly different dietary requirements. So what works for you might actually make me sick, and vice versa. So certain people go hard with the cleansing, and they try to make cleansing as just the penultimate. So when I saw with people like that, it starts off and they're glowing and they're healthy. Then within a decade later, they're not looking healthy. You be like, damn, what happened? I thought you was doing it. You still doing it? They be like, yeah, I'm still doing it. And you like side eyeing them. You like, okay, you might need something else. But it's because they're stuck at just the cleansing phase. Mm-hmm. Then you have the rebuilding phase. After you done stripped everything, can you build it back up? And then, so a lot of people try to skip the discomfort of the cleansing phase and go to all the herbs and supplements that's about rebuilding. And then they say that stuff don't work. You be like, but you didn't clean. So you can't rebuild till you broke down the necessary toxins in your body, right, to be able to utilize what it is that you're trying to build. And some people just try to go to maintaining, but you got to cleanse to rebuild to know what you're supposed to be maintaining. So that you just don't got this whole plethora of stuff that you're taking and you're looking confused and none of it is doing what you read it's supposed to do about because you skipped levels. So all that's to be taken into consideration with the supplementation of what we call superfoods and tonics. Mm-hmm. Superfoods like when we talk about maca, we talk about moringa, sea moss, bladderwrack, burdock. Those are tonic food. Those are superfoods, but they're also tonics. Mm-hmm. The root to the word tonic is tone. So it's saying you're physically out of shape, your organs are out of shape, your glands is out of shape. So metaphysically, you're out of shape. You got to get your whole energetic and physical thing up the par to pull in the divine force. So, and we live in a toxic environment, so the toxins compromise our immunity. So we need to have superfoods, supplement with superfoods and tonics to tone it up to get us on a proper vibratory level. So now, go back to this. So if everything is vibration, if everything is frequency, then health is a frequency, right? Yes. Disease is a frequency. Yeah. Pain is a frequency. Poverty is a frequency. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing everything in your life that's vibrational, then you don't have to experience what other people are predicting to experience. So your next door neighbor could be experiencing all that crap they saying in the world and you good over in your house because you focused on keeping and building, cleansing, building, and maintaining your frequency. Yeah. So that's my response to how does ritual support and improve your health. You want to add on to, or you want to look at what people saying?
Yeah, let's look at what people saying. I mean, you pretty much addressed everything I was gonna say, so I'm good on that front. I'll start with Lenore's comment. She said, but isn't the effect only negative if you succumb to the extent that you stay at home and are strangled by your fear? I think she's talking about, when we were talking about fear before, okay. Is the effect of fear only negative if you succumb and if you are strangled by it? And obviously, yes, that's certainly negative. Like succumbing to your fear is negative. Being strangled by fear is negative. But I will also just say letting fear rest in the body is negative. Like emotions that just sit in the body past the point of, like, when you become afraid, it's supposed to make you aware of something. It's supposed to tell you to watch your back, or tell you to, like, you know what I'm saying, like turn the light on so you could, or get a weapon or whatever. It's supposed to make you aware, but it's not supposed to just like sit in the body. And then like that's what becomes that emotion sitting in the body. That's what then becomes a ripple effect of how it becomes unhealthy for you physically, right? Because you start by like, oh, I'm afraid. Now like that fear is sitting in your body. Now you're like, you know, even if you like pushing yourself to do things, you're still walking around in fear. So your muscles is tight. You don't have control over your actions. Your breath is funny because you're walking around in fear. Again, maybe you're not strangled at home and you're not stuck in the house. You're still trying to push yourself through your fear. But if your breath is not going, then now your cells is not being oxygenated. If your muscles is tight, now the oxygen can't get through, the energy can't flow the way it's supposed to. Now you start having pains in the body. Now you start having illnesses in the body and things like that. So even though somebody could think that they're dealing with their fear in the right way, if you're not processing and releasing it through ritual, through divination, through meditation, etc., it could still be just as dangerous to you as if you just like stay at home and close the windows and lock the doors and put yourself under a blanket. Like you don't have to do any of those things for fear and for other negative emotions to be dangerous to you, right? So yeah. Etymology of words matter. Breakdown is completely appreciated. That was to you. The session of Seuss and Jedion Grai, he shared that libation is beneficial on many levels. When you pour water into the grave of an ancestor, you are symbolically feeding the ancestor as well as literally watering the earth and plants. Pouring libation in ritual reinforces the practice of feeding others. That's reciprocity, which is the practice of sharing. Reciprocity and sharing is ma'at. And this is one of the ways that African people teach the concept of sharing, generosity, and food, psychological health. Pouring libation and calling in the name of ancestors is one of the ways that we process our grief of deceased ones or the ones who have transitioned. Healthy modes of the grieving process is built into African cultures. I would agree with that.
Jetty all doing community.
I know, right? Like so Jetty, you gonna have to come to the next community. You got so much to talk about. But yeah, pouring libation, and I will also say that speaking the name of your ancestors causes you to remember them, and we often say in our tradition, we say that our ancestors live forever by the memory of their name. But when I say remember, I also mean like thinking about the lessons that they taught us. Like when you think about your grandmother, if she was good to you and she loved you and y'all played games together and she cooked food for you, and now that you remember her, you remember the things that she taught you. You remember how she taught you how to cook. You remember how she played catch with you in the backyard, whatever the case may be. And these are things that then if she played a role for you as an elder, then she probably spoke words of wisdom to you. And, every time you think of her, you think of, her reminder to live a good life, or her piece of advice that she gave you, or the thing that she would always say that now is a piece of inspiration that you can carry with you. So it's not just a way of keeping them alive in our memory, it's also a way of keeping their wisdom alive and keeping their teachings alive, and therefore keeping the culture alive and perpetuating the culture through generations, right?
What's that? Let's test. What's the 3 treasures you're talking about? Anukuru. No, you passed.
Oh no, I know. I saw what you're talking about. He said 3 treasures, but he didn't explain what that meant. So Anukuru, Nasa asked, what are the 3 treasures? Say no to drugs. Okay. Imhotep, the true father of medicine. Detoxing the cellular level, balance is key. Gaia Ra asks, which agency do we trust to check the bloodline?
I think most people doing that. What's that? Ancestry.com and 23andMe.
23andMe, yeah. I think there's one of them called African Ancestry, if I'm not mistaken. That's supposed to be Black owned. I would obviously we always recommend Black owned if that's available. So
actually, you might have to do several because the results may vary because over the decades, it's just more genetic information that they have over the course of time. So if you got it like 10 years ago, you might get slightly different results now, more informative results now.
Yeah. What water would you recommend folks bathe and drink in for healing?
Oh, always alkaline.
Yeah.
Alkaline water. Try to go with we use
9.5.
9.5 alkalinity. Even more important, pray over your water, talk to your water. Like I went over the last session, right? So it's about how you charge your water. So the water inherently on its own doesn't have any power. Water is a manifestation of the memory. Water is a manifestation of a program. So program the water for what it is that you want to do for
Yeah.
you.
And then Anna asked, can we talk about the divination method that we use? I believe she's in Bahia, Brazil. She said they use many divination ancestral methods based on Bantu and Yoruba traditions. Do you want me to speak to that? So one of the things that I often talk about when it comes to divination is that different readers use different tools, and that the tool itself is not. I personally don't think that the tool itself is the thing that is important. I think that the things that matter the most is, number one, that you trust the person that you go to for a reading. That's the most important thing, because if you trust the person who is doing the reading for you, then you trust that they will remove their ego from the situation, that they will give you the message clearly and without their opinion, that it will be a pure message from the creator, that they will be honest with you, that they will tell you the truth, and things like that, so that there's no conflict in your mind or in your spirit about whether or not you can accept that message. Because if you trust that person, then you can accept the message. And the number two, the second most important thing is that you are prepared to receive the message. Because if you go to get a reading and you're not prepared to receive the message, then it doesn't matter that you trust the reader. If you go to get a romance reading, for example, and you don't want the reader to tell you that your relationship isn't going to work, then don't go to get the reading. Don't get that reading, because if there's a chance that they tell you that, and then that means that you're going to risk putting yourself in violation of the message from Neter, the message from the Neteru, the message from the highest authority. Now you created for yourself a conflict where you're in conflict with the will of the universe, right? With the will of the Most High. So that's, I would say, like, first and foremost, you need to have a reader you trust, and secondly, you need to be ready to accept whatever guidance they tell you and whatever wisdom they give you. Okay, so those are the two most important things. As far as methods that we use, we have rituals that we do to prepare ourselves for divination work. I have a variety of tools that I use. I personally am very much prefer like cards, tarot cards. That's what speaks to me. But again, I don't. A lot of other readers use different things. Bone readings. I've seen cowrie shells. I've seen playing cards, pendulums. I've seen people use all different types of tools, and I don't think that there is a the tool is the thing that allows the Neteru to speak to the reader. So it's just a tool. The tool is not the message. The message is the conversation from the Neteru to the reader. So the tool is just the means by which the conversation had. It's just like a telephone. It's like, well, do you have a preference between an iPhone and a Samsung 10? Like, not necessarily. Like, they both let me make a phone call. So that's essentially the same thing when it comes to divination. Like, some people use this one tool, some people use this other tool. It's just a tool that we're using to make a phone call to spirit. So spirit could give us the message in this, so we could communicate the message. So me personally, spirit speaks very strongly through cards, but that's just me. So other readers have different ways that they communicate to spirit. Okay.
Let's go back down to the Hebrew person. Sorry, I mean creator. What's he mean?
He said the creator is bringing us back to remembrance to fight against our enemy devices and contraptions.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Oops, I don't know why I did that.
Once again, are we have to fight, or are we just charged to use what it is that we were given?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think we had one new comment over here. Let me just check. Peace and blessings, family. Watching and learning with my daughter. We are in Sweden, and it's 8:19 p.m. here. Shout out to Newark. Shout out to Sweden. Thank you for joining us. Goodness gracious. Okay, to our netter. All right, so I think that's about it. Then we're all set with communion, and we thank you all again for joining us. We thank you all again for your donations and the reciprocity that you show, the energy that you send to us that allows us to continue our work. We will be back next Sunday at 3 p.m. for the next episode of The Crook and the Flail, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a more interactive format. So if anyone has questions that they would like us to prepare to discuss during The Crook and the Flail, please feel free to email them to us at templeofanu@gmail.com. And we look forward to speaking with you all then. Until then, Shamim Matet.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, that's what's up.
I thought we was gonna be done like